From sunrise until sunset, and dusk until dawn, every minute of every hour of every day, on the front line, it's key workers keeping our country moving, putting themselves at risk to keep others safe, for the vulnerable, for the sick, for the young and the old. We rise to the challenge. We care, we protect, we help, we fix, we deliver for everyone. We will get through this, and it's thanks to our key workers. We're proud to represent heroes, and not all heroes wear capes. Key workers deserve recognition, protection and support. Get us on your side. Join us today.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Garlick from GMB Union London region, welcoming you to another drive-in. Pleased to welcome Gary Bollister, Spencer McAvoy from MAG, and Jabit Hussain this afternoon to talk about some of the issues that are coming up for drivers on both 2 and 4 wheels. And we're going to cover a range of various subjects this afternoon that are important to a lot of you. So welcome on board. We know more will be joining us this afternoon. We're hoping also to see Stephen Timms, the MP, join us. And obviously, if you've got questions, just fill them in on the system that you're watching on, and we'll try and answer them as well. I'm just going to let everyone introduce themselves. So if I actually start with Spencer from MAG Group, and he'll tell you a little bit about himself.
Hello, my name's Spencer McAvoy. I'm the current London regional rep for MAG. Basically, in a nutshell, we're here to look after or try and fight for motorcycle riders' rights. We're part of sort of the southeast area, etc. But MAG is a nationwide group that's been around since 1973, looking after riders' rights since that time. And young Jabid that's with us tonight is one of our members that asked me to come to this meeting to represent MAG and to help with any questions, or if I find something interesting, to ask questions myself. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. I'm just going to pass you over to Gary Bollister. He'll tell you a little bit about himself.
Hello there, all of you. Nice to be on this call with all of you. Basically, my name is Gary Bollister. I am a black taxi driver for the last 15 years. I've also worked for Islington Council. I used to work for Islington Council for 24 years. And I was a long protester of the recent LTNs that was put in place around Islington and Hackney. So hopefully just come on here and listen to some of the discussions on here. It'd be really helpful to hear.
And here's Jabid Hussain. Hi, Jabid.
Hi, pleasure to meet you, everyone. And my name is Jabid Hussain. We represent called workers union. We just like fighting for worker rights with the GMB. Most of the time we work with the GMB and stuff. And I'm the victim of acid attack while I was working as well for Uber and Uber Eats. And we are representing. We will discuss about today's. We are happy to discuss about today about the Supreme Court rules and what benefit we will get and what benefit all the driver will get. So if you got any question, feel free to ask us any question. We got some experience from different categories. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. Well, just waiting for some questions to come in, but what I thought would be really a very good idea is to get Gary to speak a little bit about low traffic neighbourhoods, what's happened since COVID, and where there have been some problems in various local authorities, how people are dealing with it, and what some of the issues are. So if I can just ask you, Gary, to start to tell us a little bit about those issues, and then perhaps what we'll do is open it up to some questions as well on that front.
Okay, Steve, thanks a lot for passing over to me. So back last year in July, around July, August time, we found Islington becoming a massive change in Islington for all these LTNs. It all started off in St Peter's Ward, and it was supposed to be just a demonstration, basically, just a run of what was going to happen. But what's happened is there was no consultation to any of the residents regarding disabled, regarding the emergency services, and I felt it to be a big problem. I thought that, you know, democracy is out the window because they were just going running roughshod over residents who pay council tax, pay their rent where they live, and to just become a complete closed off area just for the middle class. Basically, that's how it came across. I'm not opposed to some of the roads being closed. Obviously, that we have to do something to try and limit down the amount of pollution that's going on, the emissions going on. I understand that, but with the revolutionary electric cars and more emission-free cars being put on the road, I feel that with the actual car user and the motorbike user, should we say, the automotive, you know, whatever you want to call it, has actually been given the rough end of the stick. Basically, they've not been asked any questions regarding all this. So I took it upon myself and a number of other people at that time to go and protest outside the Islington Town Hall at that time. It picked up quite a big momentum with most of the Islington Council residents that I've started to get to know. And coming from Islington, I know quite a few people anyway. But the amount of people that are actually not wanting this is phenomenal. It seems like as if we have been not listened to. So we had a meeting with the leader of the council, Richard Watts, Rowena Champion, and Keith Townsend. There was another guy there, I can't remember. I think it was a minute taker. And yeah, it you can see the reasons why they've taken the stance that they have regarding imposing these changes on the roads, because the Tories giving the money to them. And as I understand it, a few councillors, they didn't realise it was going to be used for that, especially over in Ealing, and I think there's a few, I can't remember the other place, but they didn't know that this was going to be used for LTNs. They thought it was going to be a way of clawing back some of the money that the actual Tories take off of the Labour councils kind of thing. And it feels like as if we've been stabbed in the back by the Labour councils within our area. And there is a big, massive, there's a problem, because any of the Labour voters in the area now have literally, you know, they're questioning, they're actually politically homeless now, which is quite worrying, because then that's opening up for anyone to come in and try and, you know, gain these people's support. That were the wrong people, should we say, because I've always been a lifelong Labour supporter, and I feel that this is where you're going to get the likes of the Conservatives coming in and taking the show, basically. And then because people don't realise that it's actually the Conservatives who actually brought this measure in, and the Labour councils have literally just taken it with both open arms, not thinking about what they're doing, it's spiralled out of control. Yeah.
Can I just on that front, I'm just going to bring in both Spencer and Jabid, because obviously low traffic neighbourhoods have been an issue. I've been on meetings over the last few weeks where emergency services have certainly discussed the issues they have, because they've got to take longer routes around into LTNs. I think it's a problem with food delivery as well, Jabid, and with couriers as well. But I'd like to just get both Spencer's and Jabid's response on this as well. If I ask Spencer first and then yourself, Jabid.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I'm going to add something with Gary. Gary, actually. Well, obviously, the Tory don't like London. They like northern more than London. Actually, they're spending a lot of money in north. instead of spending in London. So that's why we find that the road, some of the road is like you can't, not drivable. Some of the roads are like, obviously it's not enough fund, to London. So that way we were just fighting for with Camden Council, obviously Spencer, and we are fighting for motorcycle parking and the car parking in that particular areas, even some of the areas in Newham as well. The parking
sorry, pardon me. Go ahead, Jabed. Sorry, pardon me. No, go ahead, Jabed. I was just going to ask Spencer a bit more about this campaign. That was all.
Yeah, so we were just campaigning for the parking restriction around London. Actually, most of the places, as an example, in Camden is one of the it's becoming one of the worst for the parking, especially motorcycle and cars, and especially for workers. Obviously, the first things, like in London, if you wanted to drive in central London, obviously it doesn't worth it for the workers, especially. The second thing is like, and the same time, the parking restriction in around London is really tough for the workers. Not like we don't go there in central London or around the London for hobby or anything else. We just go there to make some of the money, deliver food or deliver courier, or take passengers. As a minicab driver, take passengers. As a courier, we deliver the urgent blood and urgent PPE and all this. But do you know what the sad things like? It's really tough. It's really hard to park your car and make some money. And if you are making some money, you might have to spend money for ULEZ is not affecting us. The problem is affecting is congestion charge. And same time, we are struggling to park our motorcycle. Some areas, some councils are doing too restriction to park the motorbike, go there and come back. The delivery driver, they can't park their motorcycle and go upstairs to deliver their food. They have to tell customer to come downstairs to collect the food. That's why there are a lot of arguments happens between customers and the drivers.
So Jabed, I think I was just going to say, Jabed, I might just come back to that in a moment, because I'm keen to get Spencer's take on some of this as well. Obviously, MAG is a very large group, so it'd be great to hear what MAG have been doing on this front as well.
Just to preface this by saying I've only just become the London regional rep, but I've been a MAG member for years. But more crucially, if we just put the MAG side of it to one side, and I'm a biker like Javed, but I traveling in and out of London, I've been doing that for years. So like Gary, I've been spotting certain things happening. Now LPNs as a commuter don't really affect me that much, but I have seen areas like, for example, in TfL's own website I'm looking at the moment, some of these pictures I recognize because when I've been trying to find new ways to work, because I'm a computer engineer, so I have to go all over London, I'm going, hang on, I know exactly where that is. And I've had to turn the bike around because I couldn't go through there. So from my perspective, LTNs in that regard stop me from finding, efficient routes to work, and reading information about LTNs from other people's perspectives, because that's how I like to look at things, as opposed to me looking at how it affects me personally. But, routes to work, it blocks me. Other people find, hang on, I used to be able to go this way to get to and from where I live. Now I can't, because there are these, how can I put it, stupid planters being put down, things like that, or bollards. And then to fall back further on what Gary has said, a lot of these LTNs seem to be being put in place without any consultation, without really any forethought. And again, to fall back on what Gary just said, these councillors have done it without really thinking about what they're doing before they did it. So from our perspective, I know the London MAG group have been fighting LTNs. Some of it I still need to play catch up on, but I think the overriding figure is a lot of these plans and projects have been put into place with no forethought. And hence why people are going, well, you didn't ask us about it. If you'd asked us about it, we go, well, that makes sense. But no, why are you doing this? for example. And that seems to be the theme that when I Googled it over the last couple of weeks, and again, a refresher of just while Jabez was talking, it's the same thing I'm seeing over and over again.
There's a very interesting comment that's come up from Paul Sweeney here. It says that LTMs have cut me off on 2 electric vehicle chargers. It's now a 1.5 mile run, I think, is what's being said here to actually get where he's going. This is the same for people with disability who are now having to go on longer journeys. Those longer journeys, obviously, also, if you're in a taxi or private hire vehicle, may amount to extra cost for the passenger. If you're a courier or doing delivery, there's extra expense in terms of fuel. And then for standing traffic, I think we are hearing that also is starting to interfere with emissions. Just before I go back to yourselves, I just want to put up some of these messages just from Penny. Great work to all involved here. Well done. Another message from Paul just saying afternoon, and this is Adam Salter saying good afternoon as well. Going back to Paul's commentary, if I bring back in Gary first and then go back to Javid and Spencer as well, and then we'll maybe touch on some other subjects as well.
Yeah. So basically, I'm hearing that quite a lot, Steve, about the chargers where people are not being able to get to them, especially black taxis where their charging points are put all over the place within Islington. They're not put in the right places now, so you can't actually get to them. You're going right round the houses to get to have a charge up. I thought the whole idea was for people to be able to get to the places easier, but it hasn't happened like that. I mean, these LTNs have been put in robustly, big time, and it to me, I don't think people see the bigger picture. I mean, often I see so many comments regarding the LTNs, but I never see any good. I see about 2 or 3 good ones about them, but the rest of them, everyone just sort of like thinks, no, this ain't right. We should not be having these put in place without consultation. Because I feel that if people had the consultation, they would have had a say in the matter. And then, you know, as I fall back on the other thing I said earlier on regarding people turning to a different party now, people just don't trust the Labour Party with it because of it now, because they've just rushed it through, and that it's a sad case, and I'm hearing it more and more often, and it shouldn't be like that.
Okay, so obviously this is a discussion that we need to make sure is taken back to Labour to make sure that we are getting back to the people and making them feel engaged and involved. I'll just go back to Jabid on this point as well. If you just want to respond back to Paul's earlier comment. You may be muted.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Hello. Yeah, I mean, it's not just Paul I'm talking about. Even it's myself as well. When I just go to work, I do suffer a lot of different way. You know, like sometimes when I see a job, like I have to take it from hospital. Normally, what I do, I go for like, you know, delivering PP as a voluntary work or something like that. Well, I'm not earning for that, but for this, I have to pay the congestion. Sometimes I have to go to the central London, or I have to go somewhere and you know, congestion charge and ULEZ and all this. At least it should be frozen until this coronavirus get it over, because it's really tough for the people who's doing voluntary works, voluntary jobs, like, you know, even though people can't go out in central London, especially, they can't go out and they have to order. Some people are doing like, you know, they ordered some couriers. Not all of them they got the electric cars. Not everyone can afford it, because the price of electric car is really high now. And even if you wanted to buy the second-hand electric car, the electric car, like, you know, it can drive for 100 miles or for one charge, and the charger is not available everywhere. So it is really tough for those people who's doing delivery or courier with the car. And obviously, if you got normal cars, you have to pay ULEZ and congestion charge, And the same time, you might have to pay another £65, which you didn't even earn that much money, and you have to pay £65 and top of it, ULEZ pay and your concession charge. And that time is get over like after 10 o'clock. You're not working that time. You're going home. The central London is empty that time. So that time, most of the people, courier driver, they don't work at that time. So it is really affected to the workers, actually, especially in central London.
So I think we'll definitely have to have maybe more of a chat about how this is affecting drivers over maybe on the next meeting as well, in terms of ULEZ, congestion charging, and those extra punches in the pocket that people are receiving. Spencer, there's a couple of valid points that have been brought up here. Obviously, in relation to emissions, because I think we might need to just do a bit of myth busting here over emissions for motorbike, because I think some of the message that has gone out, especially for the reasoning behind LTNs and over emissions, may not be as accurate as we may have been led to believe. So it would be good to hear your take on this.
Well, both from a MAG perspective and a personal perspective, as you put it, it's massively misconstrued that motorcycles are polluting as much as cars. I don't have exact figures to my head. I did try and Google it just a second ago so that I could rattle it off. But if we use it as a simple gauge, we put out a fraction of a percent of what even a car puts out. I don't think there's any been measurements being made, because you can't single out motorcycles against cars or taxis or trucks for that matter. But even vehicles of the size that I ride, which is over a 1 litre in engine, both the bikes I have are over 1 litre, even those put out a fraction of what other vehicles put out. Most of the vehicles that are in London, I like the size that are used by Jabeg's colleagues, so 125s, 250s, that sort of thing. Even again, smaller. If I had to go and find a project where those emissions have been measured, it would be next to nothing that bikes put out. Bikes have been more efficient fuel-wise for years than other forms of transport, simply by the fact that they have, a better fuel stroke ignition system. So in that regard, they're better. On the personal note, ULEZ, the joke that is ULEZ. I have a personal interest in that because I've been trying to I had one bike, sold it because it was either I was going to have to pay to get a certificate of conformity to get the bike into London without having to pay the £12.50 a day ULEZ charge. And I went, no, why should I have to do that? Because then the bike was getting a bit old, I ended up buying another bike, but that bike is also now subject to ULEZ, but literally by the factor of 14 business days, it's subject to ULEZ. It was literally and I still haven't found out why, but the arbitrary ruling from TfL is any vehicle before the 1st of June is subject to ULEZ. The new bike I've just bought was registered by Yamaha on whenever it was, halfway through May. So 14 business days before the 14th of June. So I've currently got a conversation going with TfL between me as a person and not as MAG at this particular point in time to say, look, can an exemption not be made in this instance? It's literally 14 days. And I said, on that subject, who come up with the 1st of June? Why is the 1st of June and not the 1st of January, for example? And then to wrap up on the ULEZ side of it, there are plenty of examples online of motorcycles as old as, I don't know when the KH250 two-stroke kettle was made, but let's just say the 1980s, 1970s, a two-stroke that, as you know, is as smoky as a diesel, to people's perceptions. That went through the ULEZ test and passed. So, it just shows how arbitrary and how illogical ULEZ is to a lot of people, me included.
It's a very cautionary tale in relation to TfL and sometimes what they choose to do in relation to timings, charges, and other things. Sometimes I think people do feel that there is, a consultation is made, but really it's only just as a tick box exercise to say a consultation's been made. I'm going to move a little away from the LTN subject right now, because worth just asking Gary Bollister some questions about what it looks like from a taxi driver's view in central London at the moment, or just in London in general. And then I think obviously I'd like to hear back from Jabed about the issues he's having. Obviously Spencer has already talked about some of the issues as a computer engineer coming in and out of London. But if I just go to Gary, perhaps you could just give us an update on how it's looking for taxi at the moment.
Yeah, Steve. So basically, how it's looking at the moment for the taxi trade is looking bleak. You know, I think what you've got to understand is that with everything that's going on with COVID and with all these different kind of changes to roads like Bishopsgate, the actual court ruling over Bishopsgate, where they tried to stop black taxis from picking up and driving through that way, was absolutely ludicrous, in my opinion, with what they've done there. But they've won that case at the moment. So I've not drove the cab for over a year, nearly now. So, and I'm not looking at trying to jump back into one for quite some time until, you know, I see some sort of movement on the street, like the hotels coming back, the shops returning. You know, work on the floor needs to happen. But I don't see that coming back for a long time yet. And I should imagine that's the same for most trades. And when we do come back from out of this pandemic, I do believe that it's going to be a hard grind to get anyone back. I think it's going to be a lot different. It's going to be a lot of difference to all the way all of us work, in a way. And it's quite frightening, really. So I'm putting my head to something else to work for now. So it's totally different. So, but I will always have my taxi license. And I'm sure that there is other taxi drivers out there, and they're struggling. It's their only job at the moment, and it's quite, you know, it's heartbreaking when you see it. But there you go.
Well, thanks for that. Actually, I'm going to go to Spencer first, because obviously you'll have members who are in a variety of trades, who are on two wheels. What's the outlook from your perspective?
I think it would affect. Javed's probably a person to answer that question better than me. Like I say, I've only come into this side of it recently. From what I'm reading and seeing online is that these LTNs are supposed to be, let me get my notepad up, make London healthier, safer, more inclusive, cleaner, greener, and make 80% of all trips by sustainable modes by 2041. The idea seems logical, but the way that it's been done is illogical. I'm even reading on TfL's website right now that they're trying to get all forms of power two-wheelers, i.e. scooters, motorcycles, etc. That doesn't seem to have happened. From what I'm seeing, what I've seen personally, and what I'm reading online, that isn't happening. The amount of LTNs where all traffic is blocked, you can't physically get your motorbike down there. So it's, you know, what the statement from TfL seems to be completely contradictory to what we're physically seeing when we go out there. Steve, are you there, or have you lost connection?
I'm here. Sorry, I basically just adding myself back into the stream so people don't get bamboozled with too many folk. I was just going to say to Jabed, obviously you mentioned that people aren't really working in central London for food deliveries at the moment. Are they scattering out of London? Is there enough work for those who are doing food delivery to actually earn a living? Is it hard, apart from the fact that there is another matter I want to discuss with you, because I had a very interesting meeting earlier this week with individuals from the Bakers Union who want to try and sort out some of the problems between the food delivery people who are going into restaurants and the restaurant staff, where there's sometimes arguments and other issues as well. So it'd be good to get your take on that and to see what you think.
Thank you, Steve. Again, yeah, there are a lot of issues as well. It's about that there are a lot of drivers. They the first thing is like in coronavirus, during coronavirus, a lot of our drivers well, they couldn't drive or they couldn't ride the bike because they couldn't they don't have their CBT was expired, so that's why they didn't get any access to drive. They left working because they have no confidence. What if police stop them if they say your CBT expired? Because of the pandemic, people are there are all the test center has been closed, so that's why they've been struggling. And yeah, delivering in central London, the most of the driver they buying bicycle at the moment. Most of the driver they sold their motorbike, they're buying bicycle, and they're buying the electric bike as well. There is a new way to deliver the food. It is quite fast, but unfortunately that's not safe because it's faster than normal bicycle, and it goes over 25 miles an hour, whereas the London restriction is 20 miles an hour, but it goes over 20 miles an hour. But you don't need a skill, or you don't need any experience about or any basic knowledge about London road to ride this kind of electric bicycle. So people who joining who start working with the electric bicycle, they have no experience, or they taking risk for others as well, like the pedestrian or people walking on the street. It could cause any accident, like obviously the bicycle is dangerous, or sometimes, like, they don't follow the restriction. A lot of bicycler, they don't follow the restriction, and even they don't have any knowledge. They just go there and get a bicycle from Barclays or a Santander bike. They hire a bike. They don't follow the rules. They don't go to the bicycle lane. They just go middle of the road. Yeah, they're causing problems. And a lot of workers as well, they have no choice. Now what they have done, they sold their motorbike because of ULEZ and parking restriction and a lot of extra stuff they're doing with the bicycle. I know there are a lot of bicycle riders, the food delivery drivers. They have done a lot of voluntary work, like during pandemic time. They provided food to the vulnerable people. They provided, they delivered a lot of PPE and emergency equipment. So yeah, I mean, the drivers, they're taking part. They are key workers. Obviously, government should have recognized them as a key workers. While the people are not stepping out from their house, and the delivery drivers, they delivering the food in terms of pandemic. Yeah, and obviously they because of the road restriction and a lot of extra payment, people are the drivers are giving up riding motorcycles. They saying bye to all the motorcycles. They coming back to the electric bike. They're not comfortable. It is quite expensive, and if you wanted to charge your electric bike, it's cost you a lot and take time. Like you have to put your charge whole night, and most of them, they don't have a garage near their house, and they find it really hard. And if they wanted to park it in somewhere and put it on the charge, obviously that's not secure because the bike gets stolen every time. So yeah, I mean, they're taking risk and they're working hard, and obviously I hope the mayor of London will look after all the bikers who's working as a self-employed, who's taking a part of key workers. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah.
So whilst you've been talking, Stephen Timms, MP, has just joined us. Good afternoon, Stephen.
Hello, Steve.
I've just done some amazing work in relation to the aspects in Parliament over asset attacks, worker protections, and the like. Obviously, I'll let you do an introduction of yourself to everyone who's looking in right now. So the screen is yours. Here you are.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you, JBED, for inviting me to join you this afternoon. And I really welcome the fact that GMB is providing this opportunity for JBED and his colleagues to talk about the implications of this recent court decision in relation to Uber. As you say, I've been couple of years ago now, was pressing the need for the government to take action in response to the wave of acid attacks that we saw in London. Thankfully, the numbers of those has come down. But I'm now the chair of the Work and Pensions Select Committee in the House of Commons. And so that committee scrutinises the work of the Department for Work and Pensions, every aspect of it. Obviously, pensions policy, that's part of it. Policy on universal credit. And a lot of working people are claiming universal credit. Many more have had to claim universal credit during the pandemic. The number of people claiming universal credit has more than doubled in the last year. And we've been watching what's happened with that. We're also responsible for scrutinising the health and safety executive. And one thing which I think is important for self-employed workers is that there's good protection for their health and safety, as well as protection for people working in factories and offices and more easily supervised establishments. So I'm really interested to hear what the drivers make of the court decision, and to look at what we can do in Parliament alongside the GMB and others to safeguard the interests of this very important group of workers in the months ahead.
Steve, thank you so much. Just before I introduce James Farrow, who's just joined us as well, I just wanted to get up some of the other messages that had come in this afternoon. So just some of them are just quick hellos from Clever Everybody. Gary Harris has put up, or we put up some of Gary's comments in relation to LTNs and the accessibility issues that are causing some issues for deliveries and services for elderly and disabled. A hello from Manju. And basically, let me introduce James, who was one of the claimants within the Uber case. And I think obviously he'll have some comments in relation to some of what Stephen has just commented on as well. James, you'll need to take yourself off mute.
Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you, Stephen, also. I just really wanted to say a big thank you to the GMB union as well as my own union, but the GMB brought this case all the way back from 2015. It's been a long road to the Supreme Court where we prevailed. So thank you very much for the GMB for supporting that case that long. Many respects, all we did was sign the claims and let the lawyers get on with it. But the one thing I would like to there's two things that really worry me at the moment, and maybe Stephen can help on both of these questions, is that it's shocking to me that we could come all the way to the Supreme Court and see that the government is walking away from any kind of responsibility for enforcement of this ruling, for not just for us, but for all of those workers working for Uber. And also, by extension, for everybody else in the gig economy, because the government is walking away. Best I can see, they've walked away from it. They're not really made any commitment to implementing it for the entire workforce, which seems an awfully disrespectful way to receive a judgment from the highest court in the land in that way, because Uber seems determined to brazen it out. And I just worry about what the message that sends to so many precarious workers that have, trusted in unionism, have entered unionism for the first time, have trusted the law to play out in this way. It would be a terrible betrayal if it turns out that the government doesn't enforce the law and don't speak up to make them do so. That's one thing. And then the second thing is that, three things make these types of struggles work in the end. It is the clever strategic litigation that we've seen all the way up to the Supreme Court. That's been really, some brilliant legal minds have made that happen. But it's been shoe leather organizing on the part of the GMB and other unions. That's hard work, week after week on that. And it's also been campaigning and communications and striking and protesting. And I'm really worried that the government bill going through, the police bill that's going through at the moment, is going to make it almost impossible for Uber drivers to do the types of protests we've done in the past. And if we come together and we say, well, we don't get the government to enforce the law, even with the Supreme Court ruling, and we can't go on the street to protest about it. What else do we have left? Anyway, I don't mean to be pessimistic. I think it was a great victory. It was a great moral victory. It was a great ruling. It's a very moral ruling. It's a very uplifting ruling. But please, we need our politicians to enforce this now. We need the government to enforce this, and we need to protect the rights to strike and protest. Thanks for listening.
Hi, Stephen. Obviously, a lot of food for thought there, and an accurate commentary. I think one of the last points that James made was very clear. Where will we be if the right to protest is all but removed from us? When you see a situation where the police are protecting a statue and not necessarily protecting the public, you start to worry about where the lines of some of this actually blur, and also, a company abjectly avoiding its obligations. Once a court of the land, they've taken the case all the way to the highest court of the land, and then chosen to basically say, well, we don't like that, we'll throw that response away. That's not good enough. So it'd be great to hear your views on this. Obviously, the protection of drivers is one of the main key points we also had you on here for today. So all of the above would be great to hear back on.
I mean, Uber does have to obey the law, and the Supreme Court has explained to us what the law is. So, I can't see them getting away with ignoring it for very long, because if they did, GMB quite rightly would have them back in court with a claim for big damages. So, but I mean, if there's something that you put together about this, Steve, I'd love to have a look at it, about what has happened, what is not happening, what needs to happen now. Then I'll be very glad to do what I can to help. I think the crucial point on the wider issues that James rightly raises about the gig economy is the government has promised an employment bill. Now, this was promised some time ago. We are told it is coming. There is still no sign of it, but I think that is going to be the place where the changes in the law to deal with the issues around the gig economy can be taken up. Now, I don't for a moment suppose that this government is going to solve the gig economy problems in its bill, but at least there will be a vehicle there. I hope there'll be some things in it which are helpful, and there'll be a vehicle for doing more things. And so my committee has called on the government to publish that bill as soon as possible, so we can have a look at what it is that they're proposing, and working out how to amend it to deal with the wider problems of the kind that James is describing.
Thanks for that. I think obviously we're very mindful, obviously, not just within London but outside the London. Within GMB, the London region, extends well beyond the borders of London up towards Norfolk, Milton Keynes. Certainly, I think we're also concerned about what some of these behaviours mean to drivers working elsewhere as well, because what generally happens in London expands out to the rest of the country as well. And I think we'd be as well to notice that there are certain companies who are doing all they can to avoid their obligations. Just before I turn back to everyone, I just wanted to put up some of the extra messages. So a hi from Kevin Clark. Farad Hussain has said hello. Further comment from Paul Sweeney about no change from Uber since the Supreme Court verdict. Penny Robinson reconfirming that. A message here from Peter Rhodes. Has any trade union pressure been applied to the Mayor of London in respect to Bishopsgate Court judgment? To be honest, Peter, I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, that was one of the questions that came up just recently. I think in terms of where we are with LTNs, where we are with problems for drivers basically being verbally and physically abused, be they food delivery or private hire or taxi drivers who've got to take longer extended routes to actually make their journey. there is this concern. I think every one of us hears almost daily about assaults or physical assaults on drivers. Obviously, we're all aware of the murder just weeks ago, and now obviously our heart goes out to the family of the driver who was killed in Tottenham by a 15-year-old. And we do have a question that we are asking of TfL now in relation to driver safety and whether apps are doing all they can to protect drivers. They're very keen to obviously make sure we've got protection for the public in terms of checking drivers' DBSs and their security, but it's a two-way street. And in Javid's case, just talking the other day about whether it's time to make a claim against Uber for the acid attack that he sustained back in 2017. There's got to be some culpability here. So it'd be really good to hear, I suppose, from what the entire group is saying. Gary Harris has also just said, look, we need to look at the effects of the road closures on drivers' health and well-being from the stress and anxiety it's causing. But also, if you're sitting in emissions because traffic is pushed around, what effect does that have as well? So I suppose if I go to James and then to Gary and then to Jabed and to Spencer, that would be great, and then we'll go from there. James is just unmuting himself.
Oh, sorry. You wanted me to comment on the?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't ask that too well, but.
No. We've done surveys about this, and the last survey I saw, about 50% of private hire drivers have suffered a physical assault on the job, and 83% in London have suffered some kind of a hate crime, either Islamophobic or racist abuse. 94% of private hire drivers in London are of BME background. And it just seems to me that, when these issues are reported to the police, we've had one case where the police actually said to the driver, well, do you know how much this will cost the state to do a prosecution if you proceed with this kind of a complaint? This puts a tremendous strain on the system. I mean, it seems to me extraordinary to me that he was putting the burden of the costs of a trial and prosecution onto the victim. But that's exactly what happened. And it seems to me that really the police often don't take those cases very seriously at all, particularly when they involve, I'm sorry to say, people of colour or migrant workers. And no real message is sent to the public, and we create this sort of permissiveness. And now we see Transport for London looking to introduce CCTV. And of course, I would support CCTV, but only because we've reached the very bottom of behavior. So CCTV would probably help, but we need to train the swamp as well. And I see in New York, the Taxi and Limousine Commission give out stickers to put in your car to warn people, you'll face jail time if you assault a driver. I see that in Bristol, the police in that region are also doing a joint communications campaign with the trade down there to warn passengers, don't abuse drivers. But in London, I don't really see that the police take it seriously. I certainly know Transport for London don't take it seriously. We've tried to report these types of crimes to Transport for London, and they refuse to accept them because I don't think they want the data, and because there might be some accountability if they received it. So I think this whole issue of assault and crime, and now we have a murder on our hands, has been something that has been all too predictable. And I think the police and I'd love to see the police and Transport for London do a lot more than they've done at the moment.
Thank you for that, James. Well, I mean, I could speak obviously as a driver who's been assaulted. I've had everything from a 15-gallon oil can over my head, hand fractured by passengers. Basically, there is a fear. It's solitary work. It's dangerous work. To most people, you're a ghost. I've said that before. I'm interested to know Gary's experiences as a taxi driver, and then we'll go to Jabed, because obviously knowing he's been a victim of an acid attack and how that would have affected him will certainly give him a certain judgment. What's your perspective on this, Gary?
Yeah. Hi there, James. Yes, and Stephen. Yeah, so I mean, being a taxi driver for the last 15 years, a black taxi driver, and having that partition has always been quite a relief and a bit of a, you know, being able to make sure they're separated from us. But it doesn't stop the people from trying to come round to the front, and you know, you get your runners and you're getting all that stuff, and you know, people throwing things through the window. Like I've had cans of piss, sorry about language, but I've had cans of urine going through my window, and you know, it's quite disturbing. I've had someone, you know, try and punch me through the window, and as human beings, we try to not react, but you get to that point where you're just gonna have to react sometimes. You know, you feel like you shouldn't have to, but it does go on. And I mean, I've got to be honest. I mean, growing up in Islington, I always remember the minicab trade, and I always thought to myself, there must be more attacks on the minicab trade. We're not having that partition in the middle there. First of all, I always thought that, you know, that the seat, being able to someone to puncture through the seat kind of thing if they wanted to, which I think that did happen, not, you know, quite a long time ago now, but with a knife kind of thing, you know. So I've always found that to be quite a worrying factor for the minicab trade in itself, the private hire trade, should we say. But in a black taxi trade, I suppose it's more to the fact I have experienced that. I've experienced the you know, the road rage of people, and it's all come from all sides, not just from black taxis, not from buses, from everybody. So I think it is a big problem, and I think we do welcome the CCTV to be put in to the back of the cabs and to the minicabs private hire, because I think it does give the, you know, that sense of security. Really, I think and it needs to be done, and it's overdue.
I think the only problem is when we start to look at CCTV, the state of all trades at the moment, the expenditure for investing in this is not at the best of times for people in terms of the practicalities. Obviously, for moped delivery drivers, all they can do is get a sort of a cam like the police and those you know, providing you know, parking tickets can give out. Jabin, it'd be great to hear from you. I know we're getting sort of close to the witching hour.
You're absolutely right, Steve and Gary. Oh, by the way, congratulations, James. You've done a great job, and you brought us a victory for us, for all the self-employed. Behalf of 8 million self-employed, I'd like to congratulate you. And my honorable MP, Stephen Timms, thank you for joining with us. Yeah, as you mentioned about the CCTV cameras, I've been to the town hall a few times. I mentioned about the CCTV cameras. I mentioned about CCTV cameras where there are a lot of crimes have been taking place in London. Instead of CCTV cameras, the government and the mayor in London, especially in London, they're using as a business way. Instead of doing catching the criminals, instead of catching all the crimes taking place in small alleyways, small buildings, a lot of drivers been attacked. A lot of drivers, myself, I was attacked as well as with acid, and obviously there are a lot of drivers been accused and attacked by the criminals. Not just drivers, a lot of pedestrians as well. There are a lot of business in central London last few years, and most of the time, all the CCTV cameras been used for the making the money way, business way, not instead of catching the criminals. And there are a lot of drivers been attacked. Well, when they call police, they're too lazy to look at the cameras and reverse it. Instead of that, but if you miss one step, if you go 21 to more than 20 miles, or if you're taking any right or left, you might get a camera ticket. But unfortunately, if someone stepped or died last 2 years, a lot of drivers been killed, a lot of delivery drivers been killed, accused. As Gary mentioned about this driver get accused. Yes, a lot of delivery driver been accused. When they went to the delivery, or they wanted to take his motorbike, they will say, I'll call police. I'm going to tell police my wife, you just sexually accused my girlfriend, and this and that. Even though a lot of minicab driver have been accused, sexually accused as well. Minicab driver, ladies or men. Minicab drivers, they went one of the place where there is no CCTV cameras, and he said, he's just customer jumping out, and he was just saying, okay, if you just talk, I'm going to call police and I'm going to say you harassed me. So that kind of blackmail, it's kind of like blackmailing drivers and accusing drivers, especially BME drivers who are from minorities. So yeah, there are a lot of different way driver been accused. And well, obviously, if you call Uber, they will say like, yeah, call police. They won't take any responsibility. If you call Deliveroo or if you call any other company, they won't take that, because that's the opportunity they take. You are self-employed. You need to depend yourself. So yeah, it is a great news for us, like that we've been counting as a workers. It is really important for us. Like how many drivers didn't take a holiday? If they want to take a holiday, they have to go on that day when the school is closed, on that day when thing is closed, and that day when school is closed, that day is the busiest day. So driver have to pay double payment for the holiday if they want to take their family outside. They're not treating as the same as like other workers. The other workers, they get a holiday at the same time when most of them they get that school get closed and all this. But the driver can't do it. So well, obviously the driver deserve a holiday, and obviously I hope all the delivery drivers as well as minicab driver and the delivery driver, food delivery driver get backdated all this payment, the holiday payment, and the payment from Uber and Deliveroo. Not just Uber, we can't say 8 million self-employed. They deserve their payment. Not just Uber, I'm going to say. I hope all the company will follow and government will take the security restriction on it. And all the driver get that, because there are a lot of drivers, they are suffering. They bought it 30 grand. They spend 30 grand for the minicab car. They spend they bought a 40,000 pounds. How much they earning now? Some of the drivers they're earning only 50 pounds, 60 pounds a day. He said, I'm happy for that now. So how much government funding them? Not that much. But the driver are struggling at the moment. Who does anyone asking? One of my friend last few months ago, well, he couldn't pay his payment for his car. At the night time, after 12 o'clock, the guy came and he wanted to take his car back because he couldn't pay the payment, finance payment. They're trying to grab his money, then grab his car, and then he spoke to, he borrowed some money from all of his friends, and then he got his car back after that day. So
I was going to say, Jabin, but the car came back damaged. Santander sent bailiffs after midnight to his home, scaring his family. He looked like a common thief to his neighbours because there was a commotion in the street, and he was out of pocket, so it wasn't a great situation. I'm mindful that we're coming up to 6 p.m. So what I wanted to quickly do was thank everyone for joining us, and just get a very quick last comment. Firstly, from Spencer from Motorcycle Action Group, MAG.
I'll basically reiterate what everyone is saying. I don't think I've disagreed with anything that's been said. The only thing that I would like to say was just from a motorcycle-centric point of view, just the LTNs, we need to be included on that. You know, if it's all about reducing pollution and traffic, and they're saying they want to put motorcycles on there, then do it. Regarding motorcycle-enabled crime, our group had a conversation about this last week. A lot of it is done on scooters. So if we can attack that side of it, i.e. reduce the crime on scooters, then we reduce the crime overall that's enabled by these individuals on these motorcycles or scooters. So having motorcycle inclusive policies by councils, by the police, by TfL, those things need to be thought of more. It helps us as bikers, but it helps the victims of the crimes. And then lastly, on the CCTV thing, as Javed said, it's been used as a means to generate revenue rather than fight crime. And when it is used for other means, it's abuse of this data against minorities and the public at large. And personally, CCTV has never helped me when my bike's been knocked over or I've had an altercation with another motorist in the street. So literally, I don't think there's anything else I can put from our side of it from a motorcycle point of view. So, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Gary next.
Yes, thanks a lot for inviting me tonight, Steve. It's been nice to hear from people like-minded like myself. And yeah, I don't disagree with anything that's been said in here tonight, if I'm honest with you. It's quite eye-opening to hear about the acid attacks on drivers, and also on the LTN part of thing with the motorcycles. I mean, I totally agree with you regarding that they should be allowed to go through, but equally, I feel that if that's going to be the case, then that opens up the whole entire thing for everybody to have some sort of a way to get through there, which would be, you know, electric vehicles all the way. I feel that's what it's all about, isn't it? Reducing congestion or reducing pollution. That's what they're aimed at to try and do, and make it safer streets for everyone. So I think you're in a right situation where I think the motorcycle should be allowed these access, but I also equally think that electric cars should be equally allowed access to these places.
Thanks very much for that. I'm going to go to Jabid, then James, and then Stephen. Jabid, any final comments at all?
Yeah. I will say the first things, like, I'm really disappointed about new rule about the demonstration, all this, because this is our democratic right, and we should have say loud. We need to say loud if the government don't listen to us, and it is a discriminate to all the democratic as a democratic country where I live in. Is a democratic country. We need to speak loud for this. What is government not listening to us, and the authority, the local authority, not listening to us. We need to speak loud, and our democratic rights has been frozen. So it is really important for us to. I hope Mr. Stephen Timms will speak out about it at the parliament, like this, because we got a few more demonstrations coming up from MAG as well and from our side as well. So we really worry about what to do and how to do it, and hope Stephen Timms will speak out at parliament about it.
Thank you very much for that, Jabid. Let me turn to James now.
Yeah, I would like to plus one what Jabid said, and personally ask Stephen if he would please vote against that bill and oppose it. You know, it may be that protest rights is all we've got left, and that's really at risk. And the police have abused the powers that they already have. We saw that on Friday night in Clapham Common, and they have adequate powers as it is. They don't need more. Personally, I ended up on trial last year accused of assaulting 2 officers just for using a megaphone, and that was thrown out. But with this new bill, that is the type of a criminalization of legitimate protest that could be held up in courts, and that's a really dangerous road to go down. So I really hope that please don't let us lose those protest rights. So Stephen, really counting on your support for that.
Thanks very much for that, James. Let me go straight to Stephen.
Well, thanks, Steve. Thanks again for inviting me, and a really interesting and important discussion. I certainly will be voting tonight against the government's policing bill, as the whole Labour Party will be. No doubt the government, with their majority, will get it through, but then we'll have to see what happens in committee, what happens in the House of Lords, and there's still a long way to go before that bill reaches the statute book. But generally, lots of issues have been raised. There's lots for us to do. I am very keen to work with GMB and others on this call on the problems that have been raised. I'll be glad to take them up in Parliament, glad to table questions, speak in debates, whatever is needed. And if GMB can take the lead in organising us all, I'm looking forward very much to being part of the fight. Thanks for inviting me tonight.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to thank everyone for contributing today, and we will again next month have another drive-in event, and this is recorded so we know that people will be checking in to watch it later as well. just to let you know, the GMB does have a legal team, including lawyers, for when you are dealing with issues from a motoring perspective as a worker. Having a union membership is a really beneficial way to protect yourself in instances when you're dealing with work related situations. We welcome you joining us on the next meeting. For those who have joining me in under an hour at the Hermes package, I will just say that we have just negotiated a pay increase for Hermes Couriers that's just subject to vote. The GMB members are already members prior to last year who were part of this are going to also see an extra bonus for just being a GMB member from Hermes, which tells you everything, nearly equivalent of 2 years membership fee. So there is some value there. I'd like to thank all of those contributors. Penny has just put up a very message, join the union today. And there's a very important message from Gary Harris about being mindful of protests, whether your company can discipline you or for bringing your company into disrepute. You've got to be ultra careful about this. Once again, thank you everyone for joining me, and we'll hopefully see you on the next event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whether you're worried about safety in your workplace,
getting the protective equipment you need,
or protecting terms and conditions,
we've got the resources, the advice and backup
to support you through this challenging time.
We're proving that together we can win for our members every day.
Whatever job you do,
wherever you work,
full-time, part-time, apprentice or student,
we're here for you.
We are the trade union for everyone.
We never give up and we never give in.
More than 500,000 people have already joined the GMB.
And we've been winning for members since 1889.
Our family is 600,000 strong.
We're GMB. Be part of it.
Get us on your side today.